Lana Wilson, director of Miss Americana, thank you for being here. This documentary follows Taylor Swift. It's a real deep dive into her life and career. And I know Taylor has said she wasn't sure if she wanted the documentary to be released when she started it. So, what was it like for you to be working on this, not knowing it was going to come out, or was that not something you were concerned with?
That was something I just never thought about, honestly. I felt really confident that we could make a great film. And from the beginning, I remember when I first met Taylor in person, we basically spent an evening together talking about what the film could be. She had a lot of questions for me about what my process was like, and I had a lot of questions for her about what was going on with her at the time. And basically what I saw was an iconic artist and a woman who so many people look up to around the world, who was going through a real transformational moment in their life and their career. Taylor had not done an interview in 3 years when we met. She had actually been in hiding because she'd experienced this big social media backlash where she'd gone from being America's sweetheart to being on the cover of a national magazine being called a liar in the course of a year. And she'd kind of shut herself away from the world and was trying to figure out, basically, how can I be an artist who's constantly putting themselves out there for public approval, for public judgment? How can I keep doing that and keep putting my music out there while protecting myself from all of the noise, all of the opinions? She was reevaluating her belief system and how she wanted to live. And so it was this incredible opportunity for me to come in and document what was happening. And I was particularly excited about this because even though at first I thought, okay, Taylor Swift is one of the biggest celebrities on earth, we could not be more different in some ways, it seems. I also felt that as a female artist also working in a male-dominated industry, I had a sense that we might have some experiences in common and that we might be able to connect in that way. And what I ended up seeing and what the film was ultimately totally focused on was exactly that, was looking at Taylor Swift through the prism of a feminist story about someone constantly combating systemic misogyny.
Yeah, and like you said, she was in this self-imposed exile for a year. And in the film, she talks about a lot of things she's never talked about before, like her innate desire to please people and be the good girl, and her eating disorder and body image struggles, and of course her sexual assault trial. So what was it like getting her to open up about those things?
Yeah, well, it took time and trust building. The first interview I did with her was an audio only interview. And a lot of what you hear in the film is from that interview, some of the voiceover stuff. And I did that because I think people in general, but especially someone like Taylor Swift, whose appearance is constantly scrutinized, dissected, and often in a really horrific way. It led her, as you see in the film, to develop an eating disorder, this endless media commentary on her body and on how she looks. But especially with someone like her, for whom she's gone through the ringer with the media dissection of her appearance. And also she's had this life experience of going from being a girl to growing up into a woman, all in the public eye, under the pressure and the threat of the cameras of paparazzi, which are constantly, jumping out of bushes, peering around a sidewalk corner, a really intrusive force in her life. For all of those reasons, I thought, wouldn't it be great to get to talk to her and record, but not have a camera there and not have her have to think about how she looks for a second. So we did this audio interview first, and that was a real trust building thing. And then we gradually did more interviews and filmed in more and more increasingly intimate, I would say, situations. And I think it just took the time, and it was our conversations and the sense that Taylor got that I wasn't here to judge, that I wasn't looking for the most sensational material possible, that I was looking for something bigger and deeper than that. And I think it all culminated in a way, it might seem counterintuitive, but actually the hardest thing in the film to film was filming Taylor writing songs, filming in a studio with her, because for her, the studio is this happy place, this place where she's liberated from the judgment, the opinions, all the noise that she's constantly experiencing in the outside world. In the studio, she's kind of sequestered in this really beautiful way. And she's amazing at, just focusing in on the song, on the music, on the writing. And it was hard to be able to film there because I think she worried, understandably, what will it be like with the camera there? Will I be able to write songs in the same way? Will this impede my process in the one place that is, where I feel completely free, basically? So that also took a lot of time. And it started with me alone coming into the studio, just sitting still with the camera myself, then me bringing in a cinematographer the next day, again, beginning just being completely still, and then slowly moving around, getting more angles, then bringing in a microphone, that kind of thing. So it was all a gradual process over time.
Yeah, I don't think she's ever had, like filmed her creative process like that before, like her songwriting from like beginning to end. You could see her just come up with the lyrics and the melody on the piano and stuff. So it's very interesting. Well, one of the biggest moments in the film is when she decides to take a stand politically, specifically against Marsha Blackburn. And, there's this really powerful scene when she tells her dad and her team what she's going to do, and they're very much against it, and they're just kind of thinking about the bottom line. So how did you go about filming that? Was that another case of you just being in the background, like fly on the wall? Because that moment didn't seem planned, I guess. It wasn't like she told she was going to do this.
It wasn't planned. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is. I don't usually use the phrase fly on the wall because I think that, I'm present. I'm not invisible. I'm not like a fly on the wall. And I do know that, of course, having another person in the room and having a camera in the room does change things in ways I sometimes can't fathom. But I did feel like there was a level of trust that had been developed, and there's been enough time kind of spent, with Taylor and her family and her team to earn that trust. So yeah, that was an incredible thing to witness. It was, I think, the culmination of years and years of Taylor growing and evolving in all of these kinds of ways. In the film, it really comes out of her experience of this sexual assault trial, which was a traumatic experience in which she went through this trial that she did win after she was sexually assaulted. But despite the fact that she won, it was still humiliating and dehumanizing for her. And it was this incredible moment of gaining perspective for her, because she realized, even though I had 6 witnesses, I had photo as evidence, I had the best lawyers that money could buy. In other words, she was coming from a place of extraordinary privilege. Still, this trial was this traumatic to her. And this made her think about, what about all these other people who are in a much, much worse situation than me? And she kind of realized that she had this responsibility to act for others. So that was kind of the catalyst for her coming to this decision to speak out politically for the first time. And in that scene that you're talking about, I think it's powerful not only because of the politics, but also because she makes the decision to stand up to her father. And although her father loves her very much, and everyone in the room loves her very much, they're great people who have been supporting Taylor behind her for 15 years. It's a moment where she says, I hear your point of view. I understand where you're coming from, but I have to go my own way now. I have to do things differently. And in that, I saw this coming of age moment that I thought millions of people could relate to in their own lives in one way or another. We all have that moment where we're doing something that our parents don't want us to do, or we're having to make a hard decision that is not the easiest road to go down for ourselves personally. So once we had that scene in the can, it just felt so clear to me that this is the climax of the film, and everything else should be building to that. So at that point, the editing process became about, fundamentally, this is the story of a good girl deciding to speak out. And yes, it's a story of an artist with insecurities and struggles and challenges. And there's a lot of different roads you could go down. But once we had that scene, every scene that came before it had to kind of carefully build to it. And that was the whole trajectory of the film.
Well, there are also some other full circle moments in a sense, because after the midterm results, you know, she's down and her mom's like, it's okay, we'll just work harder for the next 2 years. And she goes and writes Only to Young, which is just used in a Biden ad. And at the very end, she talks about how she wants to use her platform to speak out while she still has it, because she's like kind of preparing for the downturn, because she's like, you know, there's a double standard against female acts. They're treated as disposable, and she's almost going to be 30. So, you know, and then this summer she drops Folklore, which is the biggest album of the year now. So what, now knowing what we know now, how do you look back on those two moments in the film?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I do think this process that Taylor went through, as documented in the film, was the process of letting go of everyone else's expectations of you. And that's both, you know, the pressure, the drive to achieve, to focus on applause, awards, the size of the crowds, all of those kind of markers of external validation that I think any artist can relate to, and that I actually think any person can relate to, now that we're all on social media getting thumbs up and thumbs down and tracking our validation in the eyes of other people all the time. So I do see her release of Folklore this summer as the culmination of this story of someone saying, you know, ultimately I can't control what other people think of me. I can only do what I believe. The other part you're talking about, where she's reflecting on how when you're a female artist and you turn 30 and you're in the music world, that is often a death sentence. And, you know, she's had a 15-year career already, and she's only 30 now. And I can't think of any other female artist who has had longer than a 15-year career at her level at this point. There's only a few other people who are comparable. So she's kind of charting this new path that no one's ever gone down before. And I think in the film, you do see her becoming increasingly conscious of the limitations that society is placing on her because she's female. And as she becomes increasingly conscious of that stuff, she becomes increasingly angry in a way. And it does lead to this recognition in the end of all of these contradictions of, yes, I'm going to keep putting out work. I can't control what anyone thinks. If I try to please everyone and to make everyone like me, ultimately I'm going to hurt myself. So I did see the release of this album as a marker of the freedom she's found at this point.
She's always going to have that platform. So she has.
I hope so. I want to see her playing stadium shows in her 80s. That's what I would love to see, you know?
Yeah.